welcome to this particular exercise. Several students seem to have confusion about this very basic exercise about traveling and finding out the cost of gas and how many tanks were being done. This is really, in a way, several problems rolled into one. We have, in this particular example, two friends take a 3,000-mile trip together, but they drive their own cars. That's the thing. So here we have car A, and we have car B. I'm going to write these down in separate areas. There's car A, sorry, it looks like Cara, and car B, but I want to deal with space so you can understand and visually get the gist of the video. Alright, we know car A right now has a 12-gallon gas tank, 40 miles per gallon. Car B, a 20-gallon gas tank, 30 miles per gallon. Both drivers pay $2.90 for gas. Alright, so we want to know, first of all, in part A, we want to know the cost of one tank of gas for car A. The cost of one tank of gas. We know we're going to pay money for it, obviously, because we want to know cost. And it said the cost was $2.90. And notice the word per gallon. When it says per, always think of per as having a line, which means divide. So $2.90 per gallon. I'm going to write it like that for both drivers. $2.90 per, think of a line, gallon. Alright? Now, I want to know the cost of this, so what I'm going to have to do, if it's $2.94 per gallon, then I can put 1 there. Car A, if you recall, has 12 gallons in the gas tank, so I'm going to put down 12 gallons. Again, just indicate that for those who are highly visual. There's the yellow right there. Car B, on the other hand, has a 20-gallon gas tank. So I'm going to multiply this one by 20 gallons. This is car B, to give you kind of a comparison here. Highly visual. Pause the video if you need more time to process it. Alright, when I multiply these together, what happens, the reason I've written it that way, the word gallon cancels out in both cases. So I simply multiply $2.90 times 12. And if I do the arithmetic on that, the cost of the gas is $34.80 for car A. Gallons can't slide into car B one, and I have $2.90 times 20, which is going to be $58 for the gas. That's the cost. Alright, get this a little prettier here. Part B. Part B says, and I'm going to change Part B to a different color since I'm a very color person, as you already know, and see if it'll help you out. Part B for both of them, how many tanks of gas do they use for the trip? How many tanks? And you say, well, it has a 12-gallon gas tank, but that's one tank. That's one tank gas. So what I have to do is I have to look at how far they're traveling to know how many tanks, because they're going to have to fill up. They're not going to drive 3,000 miles on one tank of gas. I think we all know that. That's common sense. So what I have to do is find out how much they're traveling. They're both going to travel 3,000 miles, that's for sure. 3,000 miles for car A and 3,000 miles for car B. Put a little line here to divide these. Alright, now, of course we're spending money. We want to know how many tanks. The key word is the word tanks. We know, based on the mileage of the car, that car A averages 40 miles per gallon. Again, that word per is sitting here. 40 miles per gallon. Read in the yellow. For car A, it's 40 miles per gallon. Now, normally, I would want to write 40 miles per gallon like that. The problem is, the miles will not cancel out because the miles is on top of the fraction and on the bottom. So I have to write it a little bit differently. In fact, I'm going to write this so it's less confusing, so the word miles is right here. So I'm going to write it backwards from what you would think we would. I'm going to put 40 miles per gallon. You can write these pers either way, up or down, or down or up. It doesn't matter which way you write it. I'm going to write it like that. And what happens this way, when I multiply this out, the word miles will cancel out. Car A gets 40 miles per gallon. That still doesn't give me tanks. But I know in the problem also that it has a 12-gallon gas tank. Look at the yellow. In other words, one tank holds 12 gallons. I want tank to be my answer. And the reason I'm writing it this way, one tank and 12 gallons, is so that the words will cancel out the way they're supposed to. Let me put a big black line between these so I don't confuse anyone. The reason I wrote them this way is so that when I do the math, the miles will cancel out and the gallons will cancel out. If you flip it the other way around where the 12 and the 40 are on top, your arithmetic won't work out correctly. Any number that's a whole number by itself, remember, can be written over 1. And when I write this out, it's going to be 3,000 on top and 40 times 12 on the bottom. The only word left that's not been crossed out is the word tanks. And if I do the math on that, I get 3,000 over 48. Again, still tanks. And if I do the math, don't round it off, I get 6.25 tanks of gas. I would do the very same thing for car B, except in the case of car B gets 30 miles a gallon, so I have a 30 instead of a 40. Now I'm just going to write the numbers right here. And it has a tank that instead of holding 12 gallons of gas, that tank holds 20 gallons of gas. I'm going to have something like this. I'm just going to do this in the interest of time. All right? Finally, in part C, which I'll do in black, it says how much, cost-wise, do the drivers pay for the gas. Now you might say, well, we got to pay already. No, I got to pay in part A for one tank. One tank of gas, in other words, for car A, one tank of gas was $34.80. 2 tanks would be $34.80 plus $34.80. 3 tanks for that car would be $34.80, $34.80, $34.80. How many tanks does car A need? Car A needs 6.25 tanks. So if I want to know the cost of the gas, part C of this exercise, I would multiply 6.25 tanks times, and if you're wondering about this multiply-divide deal, remember that it costs $34.80 per tank of gas. So the word tanks will go out, and I'd simply multiply 6.25 times 34.80, and that would give me the cost for car driver A's vehicle. And if I multiply those together, I would get $34.80 times 625, which is $217 if you do the calculator part, and 50 cents. You do a very similar thing for the other part. I don't want to do the problem for you and you just become a passive learner and just write everything down. I hope this helps you with this exercise. And again, if you still don't get this with a video, I would suggest a tutor or a one-on-one session with one of your friends in class or with your instructor.